Hello. Okay, so I'm a tiny bit late, but I made it. Hello, everyone. Um, yes. Okay, right. It's Friday afternoon. It's February 5th, 1 o'clock p.m. And oh, that's Pacific time. My name is Alison Pitt, and you're watching Daily Star Trek Views. It's the sort of, as you might tell, the less formal version of Daily Star Trek News, where we talk a little more generally about things and also when there's Star Trek to be watched, a little bit of Star Trek too. So that's what we're doing today. I apologize for being a minute late. I'm going to blame it on the lunch. I ended up having to have two lunches because the first one just wasn't good enough, and it sort of threw off my whole entire schedule today. So I apologize for that. But hello, welcome. Glad to see some of you here. Um, I know that there's probably a few new faces, possibly. Today has been a weird day in terms of YouTube. The latest episode of Daily Star Trek News has had a lot of views. I think people are looking for that Paramount Plus ad and they're coming across me. So, hello. If you're new here, let me just give you a quick rundown of what we do with Daily Star Trek News. So, we are here. I am here. It's me. Hi. I'm here on YouTube, but we also have a podcast. If you listen to podcasts, we're on all the major podcast providers. We also have a website at dailystartreknews.com. That's where we post all of our articles. And of course, we're on the socials. If you prefer to have your news delivered to you, we have a newsletter that comes out every weekday, and it's called the Daily Star Trek Newsletter. There's a theme going on. And that gives you the highlight and the full text of everything that's going on in the news that day. So it's like, if you can't tune into something else, it's a really good another option for you. So that's what we're all about. We want to bring the news to you guys wherever we can, and we try to avoid spoilers and speculation and that sort of thing, except for this show. That's what we do here. That's why I have a live show, so that we can just talk about other things that are adjacent to the news. So, what do we? Once again, I've started off the show today thinking that I wasn't going to have anything to talk about, and then actually, when I started writing it down, there's a lot to cover. So, um, we've got a little bit of not really news stuff, but because we are going to be talking about Star Trek Lower Decks episode 2, which is called Envoys. That'll be the second half of the show. Before that, I just want to give some context around it. And it turns out that talking about Lower Decks this week is super relevant. So we'll come on to that. And then just before we get started with anything, I just want to mention, if you guys hadn't heard, Christopher Plummer passed away today. It was just announced today. He was 91 years old, and he's had just the most amazing, illustrious career. And of course, he was General Chang in Star Trek VI, The Undiscovered Country. So if you have a chance to read up on him, read a little bit more about him and the work that he did over the many, many years of his Hollywood career, you should go do that, and maybe raise a glass of blood wine in honor. That was sad news to hear about, and I'll talk a little bit more about him on Monday when we on the show. So look forward to that. Yeah. Okay. So context stuff. I mentioned that I wanted to give some context around Lower Decks. And really, the big thing this week was the NAACP Image Awards, and Lower Decks ended up with 2 awards, which was really good news for that show. They got nominated for Outstanding Animated Series, and also Dawn Lewis got nominated for her role as Captain. Oh my God, I've forgotten her name. I just watched it. The captain. And she was outstanding voice artist for that series in there as well. Somebody in the chat put what her name is. You're seeing now I have a really terrible memory for actual facts and things like that. That's why I always have to look up trivia. Excuse me. So anyway, yeah, she Freeman. Thank you. I literally remembered it at the same time. Paul put it in the chat. Captain Freeman. I knew it wasn't Mariner. But yeah, so that's a couple of really good honors for Lower Decks. Hanley Culpepper, the director of Star Trek Picard, was also nominated in there too. And I have not done a completely thorough research job, but it looked like that the last time that Star Trek was nominated for an Image Award by the NAACP was actually in '96 or '97. Avery Brooks for his role as Captain Sisko. So that's pretty cool. That's really great for Lower Decks, and I'm glad to see them getting recognition because I think it's a fantabulous show. Spoiler alert, right? I also wanted to draw your attention. So last September, StarTrek.com published a whole bunch of Zoom backgrounds, and you probably have seen this. I posted it on dailystartreknews.com. They posted a bunch of Zoom backgrounds that are all from Lower Decks. Loads of them. I think there's 37. Um, should have been 47, but we'll let it slide. And they're all you can go and find them on dailystartreknews.com. I posted a couple of like my favorites, and then you can link back to the original article too, where you can download any or all of them if you want. All of your favorite scenes from the show are there in all their Lower Deckish glory. So it's kind of wonderful. Right. So that's kind of like the context stuff that I wanted to talk about in terms of Lower Decks today. Oh, I wanted to do a special thing with you guys today, and I completely forgot. Hang on. Look at me. I actually wrote down the links of things if you wanted to go and check them out after this. And of course, I'll put them in the show notes for this video when we're all done. Maybe a reference to Voyager's the 37th. Maybe Lower Decks is kind of full of Easter eggs. So, oh, BC. All right. Okay, so my Night Sky app says the moon is at 47% today. 47! Okay, hang on. But it's a waning crescent. I'm going to call it 50 because it only comes at, I think, in 8 segments. So, BC, the moon's for you. Right, okay. Where was I? So I wanted to talk briefly, just a little palate cleanser between talking about the award stuff and then going into the show. Paramount Plus is coming out on March 4th, and if you have not watched any of the videos, and I swear to God, I don't work for Viacom CBS, I do not work for Paramount Plus, but their series of ads, the Expedition ads, are absolutely totally worth your time to watch. Go and watch them; they're very fun. And they've actually like pre-released what their Super Bowl spot is going to be. So the Super Bowl is happening on Sunday, as you know, on CBS All Access. They've released their Super Bowl spot. You can go and watch it on their YouTube, which I will also. There's a link I didn't write down to copy in for you. So that's awesome. Yes, as Captain Ho points out, one of them is the one with the Spock earmuffs. They're like blue earmuffs that are like Vulcan ear shaped, which is great. But Patrick Stewart, of course, is at the top of the mountain, and it's it's a wonderfully weird ad. And I mean, for me, they're sort of preaching to the converted because I already am a subscriber to CBS All Access, and I will be to Paramount Plus when it switches over. And obviously, I think Patrick Stewart is wonderful. So it's, I don't know, I don't know if it's worthwhile them marketing to me, but go and watch it. It's good fun. Also, I don't know if you saw, there's a deal going on right now. If you are not a CBS All Access subscriber already, they have an annual plan that's like at a discount. If you sign up for their yearly plan with there's a promo code Paramount Plus PLUS, you can get 50% off your first year, which is like a huge discount because I think you get a beneficial rate if you buy the year all at once anyway, and then you also get a 50% off the full year. And if you work it out, it's got to be like 6 months. So you can actually like take a gamble. If you buy now, you'll get the Super Bowl. And then you basically get 6 months for free. So it's worth trying. There's more information on dailystartreknews.com/CBS All Access. If you go through that way and do it, then I get an affiliate incentive, but that's not what the reason I'm telling you. I'm just telling you this is a good time to do it because you'll get the Super Bowl plus the 50% off, and then it automatically converts over when it changes to Paramount Plus later on. And as we know, as we have discussed before on this show, they've not been incredibly forthcoming about what the price is going to be for Paramount Plus. The one guy that I can find quoted as saying that the price wouldn't change has left the business. So it might be a good strategic purchase if you were thinking about it. Anyway, you guys, who let me get this far in the show without doing show and tell? I blame all of you, all of your little things. So I promise I will talk about Lower Decks. But first, what's funny is that my show and tell is actually just sitting right here staring at me. And he's really full of dust. I didn't get a chance to dust him off before we came out here. All right. So this is a guy you might recognize. He's very dusty. Sorry. Look. It's Captain Picard standing on top of a dismembered Borg. I forget who made this. Diamond. This was a Diamond figure, and he is kind of posable. Anyway, I have had that for years. Yes, Mohammed, it's the Revenge of Picard. I have had that for years, and because I like to tell a little story with my show and tell, that actually came from for my daughter's 5th birthday. We were still living in England, and we decided to take all of her. She kind of decided, we decided to take all of her birthday money and just totally blow it at Forbidden Planet in London, which is this wonderful, like, nerdy mecca of collectibles and comics and books and videos. When I first lived in London in the early 2000s, that was one of the only places that I knew of that I could go and reliably get anime and manga and just anything kind of nerdy, collectible, Star Trek, anything. It's easier now because everything's online, but for me, Forbidden Planet is still like totally the mecca. Anyway, there's actually a vlog out there on one of my YouTube channels, I think. Anyway, I've got video. We vlogged the whole day. It was me and my son and my daughter on this trip in. We drove in from Swindon into London and went to Forbidden Planet, and she blew all of her money on Minecraft plushies and magnets and keychains and everything. And this was like one of the only Star Trek related items that I could find, and it's not that great. I mean, it doesn't really look like him. I don't know how you can see that. It doesn't really look like Picard. But I honestly, I bought it because it's so outlandish, and I adore it. Even his little hands are posable. Yeah. So that was great. And yeah, we went to, after we did that, pop figures. We came home with like 6 pop figures as well. And then we went, I can't remember if it was before or after we went, we went for lunch at Rainforest Cafe. It was that was like the big deal. And it was a wonderful, wonderful trip. And I will always cherish it. And I have this little Star Trek reminder of it too. Richard says, is Forbidden Planet on Oxford Street? It's one of them. I think it's Oxford Street, like way down the end. Like you go to Piccadilly Circus and go way down the end. I believe. Because I know we went to Piccadilly Circus because I have pictures and video of us hanging out by the fountain. And then I think the Rainforest Cafe was up from there, and then we walked down to the end. Anyway, I miss London a lot. I haven't been in years. Anyway, so that's show and tell, and I have wasted enough time. I yes. So Richard says that he's been there. Francois Schnell, been there 20 years ago, loved it too. Yeah, it's just it it always surprises me that there aren't more of them around, although I think part of the reason that Forbidden Planet is so wonderful is because there aren't more of them around. You do kind of have to go, you have to make the trip, and the trip is just always worth it. So, all right. I'm going to take a little drink here. So, Lower Decks, Star Trek Lower Decks, Series 1, Episode 2 is called Envoys. And I think I mentioned last week that this show, like this show is like an entire just gigantic Easter egg that I can't even I can't even begin to unpick, because as we demonstrated earlier today, I have a really terrible memory. And this is one of those shows that like every single frame is a Where's Waldo of some kind of Easter egg of some sort. And I am not going to even attempt to kind of keep up with those, because you just can't. What is wonderful about it is the fact that I think Mike McMahon, and I have to find the actual quote at some point. And Mike McMahon basically said this series is a love letter to Star Trek. They did that deliberately. It brings out all the greatest hits, and it's meant, for me, it feels wonderful and familiar. And a lot of the times I'm watching it going, it looks like I should know. Do I know that? Have I seen that? And that actually is great for a show like this. It's 22 minutes long, 25 minutes long. It is so rewatchable. Um, I I haven't rewatched it since I watched it the first time last fall. And I've been watching it for this because I wanted to refresh my memory. And it was like, why haven't I watched this again? Because it's so wonderful. Um, like from start to finish, it's just a really, really delightful thing. Um, the Easter egg, and this episode in particular, I think is a really good one in the series, because it establishes the fact that you're going to be getting callbacks to everything. I mean, and I can't remember the name of the planet, Tanagra 4, something like that. Somebody pointed out that I made an error in my Zoom backgrounds post, or the story earlier this week. It isn't actually Ryza. It's Little Ryza on, I believe it's Tanagra 4. They literally, Talgana 4, thank you. What's Tanagra? That's Darmok. Somebody's gonna take away my nerd card here in a minute. This episode is really interesting when we talk about like a big giant Easter egg. It's interesting on a meta level, because they literally took you on a physical journey through all of the different alien races that they could think of, and they created this planet with all these little areas, and all of those little areas not only covered a whole bunch of sort of iconic Star Trek races, they also made them span every Star Trek series. I mean, they even had the animated series in there with the Vendorian, right? And they drew from absolutely everything. And I think on a sort of a meta level, this episode sets you up to say, listen, we're going to take you on a journey that's going to draw on your knowledge from every single Star Trek series ever, and it's going to give you something satisfying. They even played with you on the Ferengi, because at the end, of course, Mariner pays her friend to pretend like this devious Ferengi to help Boimler feel better about himself, right? Which I will come on to in a minute. That was a really nice scene for Mariner and Boimler's relationship. But they play on the fact that one of the criticisms of Star Trek is that they monoculture other cultures. I mean, people, Star Trek fans are horrendously racist towards Ferengis, right? Um, the idea that it's okay for the Federation to like be like, "Ugh, Ferengis are all, you know, scheming, you can't be trusted." The fact that that's okay for the Federation to think that of the Ferengi is a whole nother discussion for another day, but they totally play on that and then turn it on its head, right? They play on the whole the Ferengi are devious and can't be trusted, and then at the end, she's like, "How's the wife?" They really, and that works on all of the levels because they're talking to us. They're also talking to Star Trek, right? They're telling Star Trek, be better than that, and we are better than that, and they're calling out parts of old Star Trek that nowadays are considered problematic. So the I, this episode is just such an important one for taking all of those kind of Easter eggs, and establishing this is what you're going to expect from Lower Decks going forward. And I personally think, slight aside, I personally think that Lower Decks is one of the best Star Trek series that there is, precisely because of its self-reflective nature. Somebody write that down because I want to talk about it when we get to the end of the season. Anyway, enough about Easter eggs, etc. The other thing that I wanted to talk about was this sort of this really great A-B plot thing that was going on. We talked about it last week because they had the whole zombie thing and then what was going on down the planet. But here there's really two pieces. There's down the planet and there's up on the ship. And then down on the planet is Boimler and Mariner, and up on the ship is Rutherford and his personal journey. So the and I almost can't call it an A-B plot that's only split up by like time spent on screen, because in actuality, I think both of those pieces are really, really important. So the first one we get Boimler and Mariner, and I mean, it is a little heavy-handed. Let's be honest. Boimler's the stick in the mud. He goes by the rules, whatever. Mariner like completely ignores the rule book and only goes with her gut, right? So to throw these guys into a situation together again, where they're sort of clashing over this, um, is a really I really like that they're exploring that relationship, because I think both of those extremes have something to learn from one another. And they're a little heavy-handed with that story, but that's okay. You I come to respect both Boimler and Mariner in this episode for different reasons. Mariner, obviously, she's got a huge amount of talent, but her application of her talent is a little bit different than Boimler is. But, she grows a lot when she comes back to him and says, "Listen, Starfleet needs people like you, because not all of us are like me." I talked about it a little bit in the last live episode, about how when Star Trek is at its best, it shows off how you have a diverse team, and not like diverse in terms of race or gender, but I mean, or even ability, but diverse in terms of personality. One person's good at engineering, but one person's good at, dealing with people. One person's good at, um, following the rules. One person as good at adapting to an uncertain situation. And they're doing that again with Boimler and Mariner, and I really like both. I actually found both of those characters really inspiring, because I'm a person who I'm more like Boimler. I tend to follow rules. I tend to be pretty like, I sit back and figure things out before I go charging in. And I find it really uncomfortable to be in a situation where I have to think on my feet. That's really hard for me. So watching Mariner, who I know is a fictional animated character, I want to establish that. I know that. But watching Mariner, it kind of makes me think, or makes me recognize the value in throwing yourself in at the deep end and kind of working your way out of it, because that gives you a huge amount of like wealth of experience. On the other side, I also, find Boimler inspiring because he struggles with a lot of the same things that I do, which is, when you think you've gamed something out and you think you know how to do something, and then somebody else comes along who has not even thought about it for a second and they do it so much better than you, that's soul crushing. Um, but that's okay. That happens sometimes, and the both of us are important for the overall story. And I think that's the kind of thing that they're talking about here. It's great that I can actually, right off the bat, identify with both of those characters in that story because it makes me want them to win. Also, the drunken Klingon is hilarious. I'm just gonna put that out there. Yeah, yeah. The drunken Klingon is hilarious. Um, so now, just quickly, because I know we're getting towards the bottom of the hour. I want to talk about Rutherford because I actually didn't realize that this storyline happened so early in the series. I actually thought it was much later. The the storyline that happened to Rutherford is my absolute hands down favorite of all of Lower Decks, and I think is just one of the things that I am most proud of as a Star Trek fan. And like, if Starfleet was real, is the one thing that I would want. Um, so that, of course, basically, Rutherford's this wonderful person, and he wants to hang out with Tendi because she's so excited to watch the pulsar, and she has nobody to do it with, and if she doesn't want to do it by herself because then she'll be lonely. So he, with his obligations to engineering, he wouldn't be able to do it with her. So he literally decides to change his career. He's young. For to so that he can schedule to watch the pulsar with her, and I think that's very sweet. And then we watch him go on this journey where he talks to each of his supervisors and says, "I think I want to change my career. I'd like to try XYZ." And e- and each he goes from one to the other, and every single time, not only does his current supervisor enthusiastically support his decision to change, but the new supervisor welcomes him and goes in with an assumption that he's going to be great at what he does. And they challenge him and they try and teach him because they want to, you know, assess his suitability for that role. But there is each of the supervisors on that ship demonstrates an incredibly high level of trust and respect for the people that they employ, which is a really rare thing in any job. And I don't know, I've never been in the military. I don't know if that's something that actually happens in the military because because the training is so rigorous, whether that's an easier assessment, like it's easier for people to trust the abilities of their lower ranks because of how the military is structured. I don't know if that's easier, but certainly in the private sector, my experience is that, if you express dissatisfaction with your job, that's a big knock, right? And if you go into a new job, they tend to approach you with a huge amount of distrust until you've proven that you're able to do your job. So watching Rutherford go from position to position with just an absolute level of trust and respect from all of the more senior officers on the ship was just so heartwarming. I absolutely loved it. And of course, there's also the comedic value of every like Shax is like, "That's the most amazing news!" Like, I mean, that bit's hilarious. But outside of that, the fact that they wrote this storyline with just sort of an underlying level of trust and respect is just amazing. And I still my favorite line is at the end when because he totally kicks ass in the in the Borg training simulation, and he goes to the security team and he realizes he doesn't want to be there. He wants to be in engineering, and they're congratulatory because he's following his dream, and he just looks at him. He goes, "Oh, bears." It's like my favorite line. It's so perfectly delivered and is just such a I can't describe it. I absolutely love it. I would just like watch this episode over and over again just to watch that progression happening over and over because it's made me feel very nice and warm inside. So, yeah. Um And a side note, I don't know, so one of my new geeky things that I've been doing that has nothing to do with Star Trek, follow me for a second, is the Monsterverse, the reboot of Godzilla and all that that's been done by Legendary Pictures. Um, Eugene Cordero, who plays Rutherford, is in Kong Skull Island. He's one of the soldiers. And if you have not seen Kong Skull Island, I highly recommend that you go and watch it. You don't have to have had you don't have to have watched Godzilla before you watch Kong Skull Island, but Kong Skull Island is a really great sort of Vietnam movie wrapped up in the auspices of a monster movie. And it's just it's I watched it for a second time because my daughter wanted to watch it. Um and it was way better the second time. So go and see it and support Eugene Cordero in his career. That would be really, really great. So that's all I have to say about that. So I'm going to quickly zoom up the chat. Jot me down a question if you have any. So, um, Robert Kaiser brings up a good point. I hope that they will not have romantic relationships among each other in the future. It's so good that people can just be good friends. I kind of agree with that. I I remember thinking at the beginning of Lower Decks that Tendi and Rutherford might be kind of like getting a thing going. But I don't think that's true. I think it's just they're just showing that evolving friendship, which is wonderful. However, I do support Mariner getting with the what's his name? The first officer guy. That's from next episode, so I won't talk about that too much. um Oh, Mohammed makes a really good point about sorry, we're going backwards in time because 'cause I'm scrolling upwards. I talked about, how Star Trek has a tendency to monoculture, alien races, and he said, that I liked in Star Trek 6 how the Klingons called out Starfleet discussing human rights as racist. And, uh, yeah, that's absolutely true. We Star Trek tends to and I'm sure that you've heard the criticism, um, in the past that, the Starfleet and the Federation behaves with a real, colonial mindset, imperialist colonial mindset, which is, pretty true. I think they're getting a little bit better on that, but at the end of the day, it's like it's Americans and Europeans who are writing Star Trek, and, I think we could still do better in terms of, taking a more global, universal, galactic view on how things should work. Um Okay, I'm not gonna go up any further. So, um, and Robert has just mentioned the chat regarding relationships. Yeah, same with O and Detmer on Disco. Want to continue to see them as being just really good friends. I would like to see them on screen as being really good friends with the strong implication that there's something going on behind the scenes. Is kind of where I sit on it. The reason being, so, one of my favorite relationships ever in Star Trek, I know that it's derivative, but is Troy and Riker, and of course, Imzadi is, like, my favorite Star Trek book. Um, but the way that that just didn't play out ever on screen, except in, looks and glances and whatever, is great because I don't actually know them. So I don't really wanna see the details of that, yeah, it's just kind of that's just kinda where I sit on it, as if anybody cares what I think, but yeah. Um, alright, so that's it for today. I just have a couple things that I wanna remind you of. Number 1, last week I told you about, Matthew Corey's new book, "Cue Me." It's out now on Amazon.com, and you should check it out because it's really, really, it's sort of charming and it's good. I If you don't know his story, he was 17 when his spec script got accepted to Star Trek: The Next Generation and adapted into the next gen episode, True Q. And he describes the background and how that all happened, and it's just sort of an amazing window into this whole, like, this what I consider to be a totally magical process. I mean, obviously, it actually happened, but, that doesn't happen to real people, right? Except it did. And it's sort of telling his story, and, it's interesting because he describes, like, how the script evolved, how the story evolved, and the little elements that went into his script, and he's got the original script. So if you were ever curious about, like, the difference between this, what a script looks like at the beginning versus the end, it's a really great thing, and it's only 2.99. It's on Amazon Kindle. So go check that out. I'll leave a link down below too. And, yeah, I just wanted to remind you about that because it's out now. It was pre-ordering last week. And then just if you're new, if you've just found the channel, please make sure that you subscribe to the channel. And if you like what we're doing here on Daily Star Trek News, either just the main show or these little shows, I'm going to start doing some unboxing type things too, because I've got a few things lying around that I would like to show off to you guys. Then please consider supporting us on Patreon. That's patreon.com/Daily Star Trek News. And you can contribute from just $1 a month and up. But there's also a discount if you go with an annual plan. So it ends up being about $10 for the year, which is kind of, it's not that much. And it means a lot to us because it helps us kind of improve what we're doing here and improve access to what I hope is a nice, dependable source for the news. So yeah, that's all I've got for today. Thank you very much, everyone, for tuning in. Hope you watch the Super Bowl on Sunday. And Robert Kaiser says something about uh, Down Below in Babylon 5. I've never seen Babylon 5, so I'll have to catch up on that. Um, Walter Koenig's in Babylon 5, right? Is that the one that he's in? I'm reading a book. I'm reading Walter Koenig's book right at the moment. I don't have it to show you because it's downstairs and it's amazing. When I'm done, I will do a full review and show it off and everything. I'm going now. I'm 8 minutes over. I'm going now. Thank you all again for tuning in, and I really do appreciate you guys all being here and chatting. And we'll see you next week. Live long and prosper.